Welcome to Keen on Green with Evan Rigsby, the podcast that dives deep into the world of environmental consulting from a multitude of perspectives. Join your host, Evan Rigsby, as he explores the intricate challenges and innovative solutions within the environmental sector. Whether you're a professional in the field, a student looking to make a difference, or simply a curious listener, this podcast promises to deliver interviews with experts and real-world case studies. Stay tuned as we unravel the green mysteries with Evan, one episode at a time.
Hey everybody, and welcome to our latest episode of Keen on Green. I got a very special, soon-to-be summer episode, and today I'm bringing on Lyssa Naron, who is a senior scientist and LSRP over at SLR, and she comes from a whole array of different experiences, helping with environmental consulting, remediation strategy, helping with regulatory compliance. I am out of breath for all the stuff she's doing. But she really helps with SLR's land quality and remediation practice in New Jersey, helping in a leadership fashion with key growth, working with different types of clientele. For example, she's worked on the industrial side, private side, working with different organizations, investors, lawyers. She's worked with a lot of different groups, and she's done a fantastic job, not only from a technical sense, but from a leadership sense, and really helping to shape and grow this practice. But one of the areas where I'm most excited on and what we're going to be talking about today, Lyssa is such a well-connected individual. You know, she is an active member of the LSRP Association in New Jersey, and she is a co-chair of the New Jersey chapter of the Society of Women Environmental Professionals, helping in a mentorship fashion, helping to coach all different types of experience levels. Without further ado, Lyssa, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks, Evan, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here, so thank you so much. Let's dive in.
Absolutely. So, you know, for those who don't know you yet, I think you've had an absolute incredible career so far. And, you know, maybe you could walk us through not only with SLR, but how you got to where you are today.
I'd love to share that story. So I started with a humanities degree. I was at the University of Mary Washington, and I was studying vocal performance and theater. Because I was going to a humanities school, I was required to take some science and global learning courses. And in the last semester of my sophomore year, I ended up taking Intro to Environmental Science as well as Intro to Geology in the same semester. Intro to Geology, because I wasn't expecting that it was going to be difficult, ended up initially being difficult. I ended up getting an A at the end, but I had to work for it. But because I took those two courses, I really, really fell in love with the environmental side of things. I had no interest in the sciences when I was in middle school and high school. This is something that I came to love midway through college. I worked my tail off, graduated in 4 years, having to do all of my sciences, compressing it basically a 4-year degree into a 2-year degree. Mm-hmm. And then I went straight on to my master's at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. I got my master's in agriculture with a specialization in soil science. Truly, though, it's a soil science degree. All of the coursework that I took was for specifically soil science. And there I was the assistant coach for the soil judging team. We always end up going to nationals. I think they won this year, which is not the first time. It's an excellent place to learn about soil science. But that was my academic background. I ended up coming back to New Jersey, which is where I went to high school. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with my degree. I could go into the agriculture side of things, but there wasn't much in the way of agriculture in New Jersey that was more widespread. A lot of the farms that you have in California are much larger scale than what you would be dealing with in New Jersey now. New Jersey's the Garden State, so there is farming to be had, but it's a little bit different here than it would be out west. And so I started looking into different things that I could do with environmental science. And I'm very much a generalist in a lot of ways. I like to talk with people. I like the technical side of doing different sorts of projects. I like to do puzzles and sort of investigative type hobbies. Those are the types of things that I always liked. So when I started learning a little bit more about site remediation, I thought that might be an interesting thing to go into. When I decided to do that, there were no jobs in the government sector at that time, at least for the NJDEP, because they'd been on a hiring freeze for years. So I had to find a job. I ended up getting a part-time job sexting jellyfish, which is somewhat of a painful job, but sort of wonderful, for the Barnegat Bay Partnership. So I was hanging out in the Barnegat Bay. We were seining the bay for jellyfish and doing that type of biological study. And when I wasn't doing that, I was looking for a full-time job. I ended up landing a job at Handex. It was entry level. It was a great start to my career. And that's how I got started in the industry in 2012. It's been a few years since I started.
I got to pause you there, because I think a common trend of everybody that's been on this podcast is, I don't think I've talked with a single leader where they've been like, oh my God, I was born, I wanted to go into remediation, I wanted to go in consulting. It just, in a lot of ways, we all kind of fell into it. And I think there's a beauty to it, because I think a lot of the younger consultants, they're like, I should be here, I need to be here, you know. And I thought that was such a cool pivot from theater to where you are now. Can you talk about that for a sec?
I can. It's so theater's, you've got to have real tough skin to be in theater. And in theater, I was going to be a character actress or actor. And I really didn't like dealing with cattle calls. They're brutal, they're hard. Anyone who does them, I have a lot of respect for them. And I realized that I was going to be doing things outside of theater a lot of the time, possibly waiting tables a lot, possibly doing that kind of work when I wasn't being able to get an actual job. And I liked the environmental science enough, and I thought that there was enough of a potential career in the environmental sciences that I made the pivot. And it's interesting, maybe I wanted a little bit more stability, but again, when I made that initial transition, I didn't know how stable it was going to be. I will say, for anyone who's considering environmental science, whether or not that's currently what they're doing, the nice thing about this industry is, I won't say it's 100% recession proof, because it's not, but it's pretty darn close. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier, Evan, in a conversation that we had. You get a couple drinks in me, and I will tell you that environmental scientists, at least in site remediation, are very specialized janitors. There is always going to be someone or some company or something spilling something somewhere, and it's going to need to be cleaned up. And so in that instance, you're always going to have jobs out there for an environmental scientist in site remediation. And there's so many other aspects of this industry. I know that there's been other folks on your podcast, Evan, who have talked about ESG, or dealing with the biology and wetlands side of things, or dealing with the finance side of things. I mean, there is a wide breadth. It's a very, very large umbrella, environmental science. But there's a place for anyone in this industry. There really is. And that goes to, regardless of whether you have a 4-year degree. I think that helps in a lot of ways, but you don't necessarily need that to get into this industry.
So off of that, and you mentioned, you know, you kind of started out with Handex, and then you're kind of getting more and more into the remediation world. How did that kind of look like as you were kind of working at some of the other firms you've been at? You were doing more remediation work. You know, from a high level, how was that journey for you? Because you were getting more on the project side, the field side, eventually getting more into the client side. Can you talk about that progression a little bit, you know?
Yeah, so my progression was unique in some ways. When I went to Handex, I had an initial role just in technical, and I helped them out with a proposal, and I did so well with the proposal development that they saw an opportunity for me to assist as a bid and proposal coordinator for the Northeast. I didn't want to abandon the technical work because I was learning a lot. And again, I kind of felt like I was doing a little bit of catch up. So I was like, hey, I want to stay in technical. Why don't you split me 50-50? I'll do 50% on more of the business development side, and I'll do 50% with the technical. And that was really fun because I ended up being a liaison between the strictly sales staff and the technical individuals who are putting together portions of the proposals and being able to mesh all of that together and really learn what a successful proposal looks like, or what a successful bid looks like. And Handex was a great place to work when I started out. One of the things that I want to talk about is one of my pivotal moments that I had at Handex. We worked on a project called Fenimore Landfill, which if you Google it, you can learn all about it. It's in Roxbury Township, New Jersey. At the time, we had the contract for on-contract work for the DEP. And we ended up going out to that site. We all had hydrogen sulfide meters. We were wearing them. And we were kind of taking an initial drive around the site. I was helping out, taking a look, seeing what was out there. And right as our meters started going off, because we didn't realize how rough it was at this former landfill that had a hydrogen sulfide problem, I stopped smelling the hydrogen sulfide, which was not so bad at that point. And then I started tasting it. That is one of the scariest moments of my life.
Oh, jeez.
And I've had a few.
Oh, God.
Obviously, at that point, you are removing yourself from that location as fast as you can, reassessing, dealing with all of that. But it's interesting, being in this industry, you understand truly how resilient the human body is, because we are exposed to all kinds of things every day, whether we know it or not. And the primary purpose of an LSRP, or anyone who's a licensed professional for site remediation, in reality, is to protect public health and safety and the environment. And I knew at that moment, this is the thing. This is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And so I developed a career from that initial job, and it's been wonderful so far. I would categorize myself as mid-career at this point, but kind of that early start definitely gave me a great footing. I ended up going to a few other firms, working with more on the industry side of things and compliance related to that, air permitting, and assisting others who are air permitting specialists, because that's a whole other specialty, dealing with tier 2 compliance, and then dealing with the site remediation up to the point where I became a licensed site remediation professional, an LSRP, which is a licensure that's designated by the state of New Jersey.
I think off of that, and I'm a huge sucker, because I think everyone, as we're kind of going up, there's people along the way who help carry you and guide you if there's a project like you're saying, hey, check this out. For yourself, as you were kind of going through some of those firms, working on those projects, by the way, I can't even imagine when you were on that site, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I give you a lot of credit. And any mentors that kind of stand out to you along the way, or like any other experiences career-wise that were like defining, or someone who meant a lot to you there?
There are so many mentors.
I figured. I
have so many. And what's fun about having multiple mentors, and sometimes you kind of gravitate towards someone. You're like, this person's awesome. They've got the technical expertise down, or they've got the client management side down. I really want to see how they're doing it and learn from them. And sometimes they kind of just attach themselves to you, and they're like, we're going to help you whether you want it or not, because you need it. And you're like, okay. But I have so many. I mean, in undergraduate, the late Neil Tybert allowed me to do work in a laboratory that we had on campus. And I kind of got that first sense of working in a lab, which was just a wonderful experience. And then Ben Casilla, who's a professor who's still at Mary Washington, one of the first things he told me, because he taught that intro to geology class, I came back, I was like, how did I mess up this exam? He's like, work harder, Lyssa. You need to work harder. And I've taken that to heart. But my graduate thesis advisor, Lynn Moody, she had a quiet confidence to her. She was just a delight to be around. She was very, very patient with all of her students. She just had a very soft demeanor to her. And now she's retired and she's got a sheep farm. So just to give you a sense of her personality. And she's got this beautiful blonde curly hair that just looked like a lion's mane. And she's just wonderful. And there's been so many people with site remediation. I got to work under some of the individuals who helped develop the LSRP program. So Ken Goldstein comes to mind. He's retired now, but Ken was wonderful. And one of the big things that he taught me was multiple lines of evidence. That's kind of the name of the game. If you want to figure out what's going on, you need to have multiple lines of evidence in this industry. One point of evidence isn't going to cut it. So regardless of what you end up doing in environmental science, that's going to be critical to how you provide a defensible narrative for whatever you're working on. And Kim Skibo, who is working over at, I think it's Haley and Aldrich now, she has a wonderful ability to work with the entry-level and mid-career staff, and just provide so much guidance on a day-to-day basis. So there are so many people. I mean, that's not everyone. That I've worked with in the past that have given me a leg up, and I've learned a little bit something from them and brought that into the work that I'm doing now.
And if I may real quick, you said something that I think really clicked with Kim, and then with you said quiet confidence, and I think
quiet confidence, yes.
That is something I just want to mention real quick, if it's that's okay, because
of course.
We were kind of talking offline. There are so many consultants, not only the young consultants, I think back to differ even the older consultants too. And it's like there's a persona that you need to be the loudest in the room, that you need to, you talk about all this technical, but I think equally important, you're dealing with clients, you got to have that emotional IQ. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know we were kind of talking about it, but what are your thoughts with kind of the quiet confidence? It sounds like that resonated with you.
It did, yes. So I think that that's important. And I think that, like you said, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be heard, particularly in the sciences. Know what you're good at and know what you're not good at. And you're going to have a team that's surrounding you that's going to be able to fill in the gaps. And so understanding that if you have something to give, which everyone who's coming into this industry has something to give, that you should feel confident in that. And it doesn't matter if you're the quietest person in the room. It doesn't matter if you get nervous every time you walk into the office. Some of those things will get a little bit easier the more you do them. And sometimes you get nervous anyway. I'll be the first to say, coming onto this podcast is the first podcast that I've done. So it's, I'm feeling it a little bit, right? But that's good nervous energy. It's not a bad thing to have that. And if you are not the loudest person in the room, especially with science, you're going to still have something to give. And so just resonate with that confidence. And this goes particularly for women in the industry, I think. We experience a lot of imposter syndrome, I think more so than the men. And a lot of times we will ask before doing something. What I've learned by working with a lot of men in this industry, because it's still a men-heavy industry, ask for forgiveness later. we're all keeping our integrity high. So just go ahead and do the thing and then tell someone what you've done. And if it's in the case of field work, give someone a call. It doesn't have to be your project manager. If it's easier for you to explain it to someone else that you've been in the field with, just go ahead and give them a call. You've got a team of folks who will work with you, and don't be afraid to use that. But again, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room.
Well, I think off of that too, and this might be a really good transition. You have been involved with different organizations. Like in the intro, I mentioned the LSRPA Association, SWEPS, you're helping the co-chair, the chapter and so forth. Likewise, with imposter syndrome, I've seen consultants come to me, a lot are females, also males too, where they're like, Evan, I don't know anybody. I say this every podcast episode, but they're like, I don't know anybody. I see Lyssa here. She's got X amount of connections. She's doing this. I don't know where to start. But I always kind of beg to differ, devil's advocate. You started at a point too where you didn't know anybody.
Absolutely, we all do.
Right. So what are your thoughts with like organizations, trade groups, getting involved? I mean, what are your thoughts with that, with the networking side?
If you're feeling lonely in your day-to-day work, the easiest way to get over that is to go to some sort of networking event. And I would say, too, regardless of the size of the firm that you have, get to know the people that you're working with. I work for a global environmental and advisory consultancy right now, SLR International Corporation, with over 5,000 employees. One of the things that I have to do in my position is to intranetwork. So I need to know who's capable of doing what within the firm from a global standpoint, so that when I have a client that has a problem, I know the specialist that I can reach out to help them with that issue. It doesn't matter what the environmental issue is. It might be site remediation, but if they have something else that they need help with, I have to be able to provide that to them and say, hey, if you need in-house resources from us, we can give that to you. And here are the people that you can contact, or I can introduce you, whatever that course may be. And then with networking outside of your job, going to any event is helpful. You don't necessarily, in most cases, have to be a member in order to attend events. There may be a fee associated with it, but some groups will have, for example, the LSRPA has an aspiring professionals network, and they offer specific programs and courses for aspiring professionals who are looking to become LSRPs during their career, or not, or who are just in site remediation in New Jersey, to attend those types of events. I know also that if you have a mentor who's in the LSRPA and you've never been part of that organization, I think you can get in for a fairly low price, which is wonderful. You can experience some of the networking events, you can experience some of the webinars, and then with programs like dealing with the New Jersey Society of Environmental Professionals. I've been part of that organization since the very beginning of my career. And when I started out, I was just attending a few events on my own dime, which wasn't, $20 here, $25 there, after field work. You're not gonna be able to attend everything. You just attend a few things. That has grown over to the years to the point where I've been social media liaison, I've been secretary, I've been treasurer. Now I'm helping to run the organization with Melanie Powers-Schanbacher of STC. So it's a wonderful organization that can give you some of those leadership skills as you work your way through that you'll get a lot sooner than you would in the position that you're in at a company, because they need volunteers. So if you are interested in being in an organization like that, for example, SWEP has several chapters. We've got a chapter in Colorado, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. We've got a chapter in Massachusetts, Connecticut. I'm probably missing one. And then obviously we have the one in New Jersey. And in the past, we've also offered programs in New York City. So I think that there is space for individuals to network and get to know people outside of work. It's also great for your career. the last job that I got was through a networking connection through NJSWEP. So that's how I ended up getting my most current job. If you need to have those types of connections, that's a great way to do it. Sometimes you might hear kind of snarkily from other individuals that certain mentors may not want their individuals to go to different networking events because they might lose them. Well, if it's a good company to work for, you won't lose them. If someone has an opportunity to work and grow and sees themselves staying there, then you're not going to lose them. So I would push against that. I also think that networking events allow you to better understand the industry. Individuals that I know who have just focused on site remediation in New Jersey and not branched out to any other state, not branched out to anything from the federal side, and have kind of stayed insular, don't have as much value. Having a general understanding of what's going on with the whole industry can be very helpful, because you can contrast and compare what's going on in other states with what's going on in your state and see what some of those trends are and where things are headed. Because when you have clients in consulting, you need to be able to foresee what their needs are. You need to know their needs better than they know their needs. That's a big part of the job.
Oh, I think that's so well put. And I think, too, is when you're at these events, and even I always recommend people to stay for the happy hours, too, because you're going to be able to talk a little bit more off the cuff, learn about those regulations. I just had someone who was all Jersey, and they started talking with someone, a little bit about New York City, whole different world, whole different regulations. And, but by the way, Melanie's awesome. I love her.
Oh, absolutely. Agreed.
And all that. We're on our last few minutes here, and I just figured I always like to say this at the end, but this has been awesome, and I think there's so much to unpack, and I'll definitely link your bio in if anyone wants to reach out to you, if that's okay. But anything else you just want to share, anything that, maybe I didn't bring, or any other resources, or any last thoughts off the top of your head right there that you'd want to share with everyone?
Yeah. Excuse me. So I would say if you're interested in environmental consulting specifically, there's a textbook called Environmental Consulting Fundamentals by Ben Alter. Ben is, I think, retired now, but he was in New Jersey in the site remediation industry for, 40 plus years. And that's a really good primer to really understand consulting versus just the technical side of it. And then one of the resources that I always send people to, because you're working with other people, is askamanager.com. If you feel like there's an HR thing that you want to know about, it can be entertaining. Some of those things are outlandish, but there's also a lot of good advice in there. It's a blog format. You can just read that on your own time and get a sense of kind of how the business world should work. And I've learned a lot from that over the years. The way things should work versus the way sometimes things do work. And getting a sense there. But I would say, if you're interested in growing your career, networking is one of the most important things that you can do. And quiet confidence goes a long way. You do not need to be the loudest person in the room. If you're interested in coming to a SWEP event, feel free to reach out to me. If you come to New Jersey and I happen to be at one of those events, I'd be welcome to introduce you to people, because I think that that's absolutely critical in the environmental sciences and for women in particular, but men are welcome as well. Yeah.
Awesome. On that note, Lyssa, thank you so much. A lot of goodies in there, and I'm going to tag your bio, tag your LinkedIn, and guys, seriously, don't be shy. Reach out. But Lyssa, thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care, Evan.